Welcome back to Vendetta Sports Media. This is the latest in our NBA preview series for season 21-22. I'm Jared Prosser. I'm here with Carl Heiser. Today, we are talking the Indiana Pacers. Carl, before we get to the basketball, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Yeah, looking forward to talking through some of these previews.
Are you really looking forward to talking through the Pacers?
Well, all right.
Look, the Pacers are an interesting team. They've made some not necessarily personnel changes, but changes at the top end after a pretty tumultuous season, last time out. So we may as well kick off with that. Talk us through what on earth went on with the Pacers last year.
Yeah, so the Pacers finished 34-38, which was good for the 9 seed in the Eastern Conference. In a traditional playoff format, would have missed the playoffs, but the play-in became their saving grace, and they had something to play for at the end of the year. They matched up first against the Charlotte Hornets, who they beat in the first playoff game, or play-in game rather, and then they fell to the Wizards in the game for the 8th seed, so ended up not making the playoffs. So overall, for a team that kind of consistently finds themselves in the playoffs somehow, probably a relatively disappointing season for the Pacers.
And all of that kerfuffle around Nate Bjorkgren, there was a lot of clamour, a lot of celebratory articles when he was hired. He was apparently the offensive mastermind behind Nick Nurse, but that somewhat blew up in the Pacers' face.
Yeah, it ultimately didn't work out, but now they have Rick Carlisle, so things are probably looking up. Rick Carlisle had his own situation where he just up and decided he didn't want to coach Luka Doncic anymore. But he's been a good coach for the Mavericks, and so I think there should be a lot of optimism that he can right the ship with the Indiana Pacers.
Yeah, without delving too far from our subject here, which is Indiana, that is interesting that Carlisle, after a decade and a half in Dallas, just decided, no, I can't deal with this all-time talent, and he's come back, roughly speaking, home to Indiana. I am interested to see how that goes. He's clearly an X's and O's genius, Carlisle. He's a wonderful, wonderful strategic and tactical coach. But a lot of the issues with Bjorkgren came around from his rather grating personality. And Rick Carlisle isn't exactly, hugs and kisses. He's a fairly testy bloke himself.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I think that will actually be helpful for this team in a way, just to kind of keep them on their P's and Q's a little bit. And I think Carlisle can get the most out of them at the end of the day. That's what I think.
Yeah, he at least has the track record. He's got the ring, whereas Bjorkgren was a rookie coach trying to act like something more. Let's go through the ins and outs. We mentioned off air that there hasn't been a lot of changes to the playing personnel, but run us through what they have done.
Yeah, so in the offseason, pretty pedestrian offseason, all things considered. Indiana is not really a free agency destination for many people. So as far as free agents go, it's a pretty tame group that they brought in. They lost TJ McConnell to free agency. They lost Doug McDermott, and I believe they also decided not to re-sign Cassius Stanley, who was a recent draft pick out of Duke. And then on the flip side, they brought in everyone's favorite point guard, Brad Wanamaker.
Trey's favorite point guard, Brad Wanamaker.
Yeah, exactly. They signed Torrey Craig, and they drafted Isaiah Jackson out of Kentucky and Chris Duarte out of Oregon.
Good veteran presence, Chris Duarte, a 1,000-year-old rookie.
Right, yeah. He's a rookie, and it feels like he's already played in the NBA for 3 years. But yeah, overall decent draft picks. Sort of an interesting direction to go in with Duarte in the lottery. Not exactly what most people expected, but just at where he is with his development, he should probably play a fair share of minutes right away. And then Jackson he's got a he's got good potential. Sometimes with those Kentucky players, you think like, why in the world did they draft them? And then they turn out to be incredible.
Devin Booker, the case in point.
Right. He didn't start a game
Who would
in
have
college.
picked him to be what he's turned out to be?
Yeah, he didn't start any games in college, and now he's Devin Booker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for this upcoming season, who do you think, Carl, will be the main man in Indiana?
This one, it's sort of hard to say because they have three players who are averaging right around the 20-point mark last year in Karis LeVert, Domantas Sabonis, and Malcolm Brogdon. So from just a pure scoring kind of go-to guy standpoint, it's a little hard to say, but I will, at the end of the day, go with Sabonis because he's the two-time All-Star on this team. He's the one who's been there, and he's, I think, the guy that they'll have to turn to really step it up and kind of clear the rest of the roster as far as just getting it done goes.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. There's a lot of debate around whether Sabonis is a deserving All-Star, but ultimately he has made it twice. That to me says he's probably deserving of at least one of those berths. A gifted playmaker for sure, and just a battering ram who seems to take great delight in putting his shoulder into the chin of a defender. How do you think the fit between, and it's the never-ending question with the Pacers, but how do you think the fit between he and Miles Turner eventually plays out?
I don't hate the fit. I do like what Miles Turner brings as far as sort of rim protection and post presence, and I think Sabonis. I haven't looked at Sabonis's 3-point percentage, but I don't. It's sort of going to be a question of it's not great. It's sort of a question of as far as spacing goes, like how they kind of work around that. Because I do think you want Miles Turner to be the guy down low, banging on the boards, but Sabonis isn't really going to stretch the floor in any conceivable way. And in today's NBA, that does make a difference, whether you like it or not. And so the fit maybe will be a little odd, but we'll see. They've made it work. They've made the playoffs before with it. So
I do like the fit offensively simply because of Turner's jump shot, but defensively I still struggle to see where they fit because you can't have Turner away from the basket. You take away that rim protection that you mentioned. But Sabonis, for all of his abilities and all of his nous in reading the play defensively, the guy wears concrete boots. He's not fast. So I'm interested to see how it goes at that end as well. But moving on from those two, who do you think is the X factor, the question mark for Indiana, the guy that can swing them one way or the other?
So other than the three I just mentioned, I'm going to go with TJ Warren for this one because we saw in the bubble TJ Warren became the second coming of Michael.
He was a god.
He was unbelievable. And it's probably convenient that Indiana. I'm sure they don't get many fans at their games, so they can kind of simulate a bubble environment for TJ Warren night in and night out. But he, I believe, suffered an injury last season, and it resulted in him only playing about four or five games.
I had him in my fantasy league team, and it hurt. That injury definitely hurt.
And so not great for the Pacers, and I think that definitely impacted how their season turned out. But the last 3 seasons before that, he averaged right around 18, 19 points a game. So he's just another guy that can score the ball. And, I think Brogdon kind of slid into the role that he had as far as being the third option goes. But if TJ Warren can get back on track and not necessarily be the guy that we saw in the bubble, but be as dependable as he's been for them the last few years, I do think that Indiana will come closer to their ceiling.
Yeah, I think you're right. If he can get that high teens, not necessarily 19, 20 points, but maybe 16 or 17 even, and play 70 games is the important thing. The guy is snake bit. He needs to play games. I like with Warren in that he gives Indiana a wrinkle in that he can play as a a small ball four. Sabonis is essentially a center playing as the four, and realistically, Goga Bitadze is their third big and he's a genuine center as well. There's no real four on the roster, and TJ, when healthy, at least gives them that option to play with four genuine wings around a big man and get a bit more switchy on defense. But yeah, he's got to stay healthy. He's got to prove he can stay healthy at this stage. So we've talked about the main man. We've talked about the swing player, so to speak. Is there anything else that you're looking for from Indiana? Something that you're interested to see how it plays out?
I'm very interested in how Duarte performs, because there will be minutes up for grabs in the backcourt. This is primarily a team that revolves around their forwards and just their forwards. Their backcourt isn't, outside of Brogdon and LeVert, not quite a lot of exciting things going on. And so I'm curious to see how much Duarte plays and whether he can be a contributor right out the gate. He had a solid career at Oregon, good shooter, good defender. But I am curious to see how he makes that jump to the NBA, especially because so many people questioned that selection a little bit at the time. And so will he, justify the pick, or will we be sitting back and wondering, why didn't the Pacers grab somebody else?
And it'll be interesting to he'll need to hit the ground running. We've mentioned before he's very old for a rookie and very old for a lottery pick rookie as well. So if he struggles out of the gate, you have to wonder how much growth is left in Duarte and whether he is someone who can develop into a starting two guard, a starting small forward perhaps. If he struggles out of the gate, is this it? Is he just another guy who plays 6 or 7 years off the bench and disappears to China or to Europe?
Yeah, when you draft somebody in the lottery, I do think there is the expectation that they'll be able to contribute right out the gate. And with his age, there's always questions when you draft older players about whether or not their development is kind of capped at where they are right now. And so I think that does just make it all the more important for Indiana to hit on this pick, because you're drafting somebody who's 24, who's older than a lot of rookies from the last 2 seasons, and so he's really going to have to be that guy for them.
Yeah, there are guys who get on their second contracts who are younger than what Duarte is. So the importance of that first season, of this rookie season, is very plain. But let's wrap this all up and talk about how you think the season will go overall. What's your prediction for the record, for playoffs? What are the things that you think will happen to the Pacers this season?
So we've talked about just their personnel, and I think talking through it, I do like their top 4, top 5 players. I do think this is a team that will compete in the Eastern Conference, and I do think that the coaching change to Rick Carlisle does make a pretty major difference as far as their outlook for next season. Last year broke a very long streak of them making them, maybe not very long, but a relatively long streak of them making the playoffs. So this is just a franchise that we've seen figure out a way to make it out of the conference. Sort of looking at the rest of the East and how things shook out last year, I don't think that this is a team that can be a top 5 seed in the conference necessarily, but I do think their ceiling would probably be around the 7th seed, and then we're probably going to be looking at this team playing in the play-in again, which is I think they can win maybe 40 games, and it's difficult when you talk about the play-in because it's a 1-game playoff that you almost have. Some teams have to play 2 of them, and so it's hard to predict exactly how that will shake out for them. But
matchups, injuries, there's a lot of variables between now and then.
Right, there's a lot that goes into it, and so I do think this team will be much improved from last season. But as far as how that manifests itself in a playoff scenario, it's sort of hard to say given the fact that the play-in exists.
Yeah, look, I agree. I think they'll be better. Carlisle is a big upgrade on Bjorkgren and should have the locker room a little bit more united than what Bjorkgren did. And if the Pacers get 50, 60 good games from TJ Warren, that in itself is going to help. I mean, you even consider that last season, Oladipo wasn't himself. They traded him away for Karis LeVert, and he missed most of the season, if not all of it. I can't really recall how many games he played with that heart issue that came up in the physical. So they also get him back for a full season. So there will be improvement. Unfortunately, the East is improving around them. So they're probably, in record-wise, I think I agree with you. They'll tread water a little bit, which is a shame because they're probably heading in the right direction in a vacuum.
Mm-hmm.
But that will wrap up our Indiana Pacers preview. That's Carl Heiser. I'm Jared Crosser. Keep an eye. This will be on YouTube, so hit that subscribe button. Hit the like, share it with your friends. It'll also be on all of our socials. And we will see you for our next NBA preview shortly.